Hey, Scott Jordan and Mark Warner here for Jancast number 149 for Thursday, June 29th, 2023. And Mark, I can tell by the temperature that it's getting hot out there, but we have give a brief intro to a guest we have with us today.
I have a great dear friend that I'm able to introduce. This is fantastic to me. I feel like it was manna from heaven. I get to introduce my friend Graham Dick, who's president and founder of Genesis Restorations. Graham, great to have you on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Yeah.
Good to be here.
So curious, what's the temperature like up in British Columbia where you are? Is it 111 degrees like it is in Texas with record-breaking temperatures and people dying on the streets?
Could still be snowing up there. You never know.
Yeah, not so much. Vancouver is the temperate West Coast. So right now it's going to be probably between 20 and 24 degrees today. Let's see, what is that in Fahrenheit? Have to do the quick trends.
I think it's
70.
like 80, right?
75, 80.
Yeah. That's not bad. That's about what it is here. Except if you're in Texas, that'd be a whole different story, right, Mark?
Yeah, so on the news this past week, we've been hearing about Texas being not even coming down under 100, I guess, triple digits for days on end.
Yeah.
And although this is not an unusual statement to say about Texas in August, it's a highly unusual thing to say about Texas the end of June, beginning of July. It's just too early in the season to see that kind of heat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the water's warming up in New Jersey last weekend. It was almost 70 degrees, which is highly unusual too for this time of year. It usually takes until August time, and that's partially why we have that mysterious storm out there, right?
Yeah. So with that said, how many people knew that hurricanes had ghosts? So there was a hurricane came across the Atlantic, came across the Cape Verde Islands and shot across, and it was called Hurricane Cindy, and then it died, and then it reemerged, and so now they're calling it the Ghost of Cindy Hurricane.
Yeah. Thanks to the water temperature, right? It hit a patch in the Gulf down there that I guess, yeah.
So it's a changing world. You know, if hurricanes can have ghosts now, I mean, I've never heard of that before, but okay, that's kind of interesting. And then, of course, a lot of this is related perhaps to the global warming threat. We had an earlier show where we talked about funguses that were adapting to global warming and infecting human beings and causing them to turn into zombies, and they made a TV show about it.
Right, that was a movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was fiction though. However, that is some of the things that people worry about. Does global warming actually affect organisms, and does it increase their ability to be infectious to things that run hotter than they would normally survive in? So who knows? But one of the things that has popped up, Graham, the fact that you're on here, it makes you such a perfect person to float this question past, is that we've had a lot of inquiries from listeners regarding Candida auris, and it's spreading at an alarming rate here in the U.S., and it's been on the news a number of times. And obviously, it's off the charts in comparison to what we saw in 2022 and 2021. And I know this is something that you've dealt with in the past too. So kind of curious is real quick what your thoughts might be on Candida auris. Is there something we should be worried about?
Yeah, with most nosocomial infections in hospitals, it's really the fact that the people there are often immunocompromised. And their immune systems are messed up, and so the risk of them catching a fungal infection in this case goes through the roof, and that's on a sliding grayscale, right? Depending on why they're there and what the problem is with their body, and then you've got all these people that have infection sites. They've just had surgery, or they come in with a wound or a burn, and so there's a high risk of infection from that source, and so there's a lot more risk inside the hospital. Those people generally aren't in the public space or in a commercial space because they're too sick. That's why they go to a hospital. So your risk out in the general public to catch Candida auris, for example, is pretty low. That's
You
not
know,
something that I would, there's a lot of other things that are gonna hurt you before the odds of that.
well, I can think of a few things, but for Jancast.com listeners, why I was so excited about that meeting. Did you hear that? Let me tell you who Graham is. I mean, Graham and I go way back. So Graham is actually the chair of the IICRC's S410 Infection Control Standards Committee. He invited me to be part of that committee because of my involvement with the IICRC's S400 Cleaning Standard Committee. And the S410 takes cleaning to another level. It's all about infection control in the commercial built environment. And obviously, there are a lot of standards that exist that relate to healthcare, but there really weren't any standards that related to non-healthcare. What do you do in an office building? What do you do in a manufacturing facility? What do you do in a government agency or mass transit operation? So that's something that has totally enamored me with Graham. But another thing is that Graham is a fellow motorcyclist. He's got more motorcycles than I do, and he rides street bikes and dirt bikes and motocross and enduros and hare scrambles and all that kind of stuff. So I had to throw that out there, Graham, just because people need to know you got a wild side to you too. So, but we're really, really thrilled to have you on. I know that I'm really curious how you were actually able to found and then build Genesis Restorations into such a well-known and respected company. It couldn't have been easy. I know you've relied a lot on standards as part of your training element to build that team, and I'm kind of want to go down that path with you a little bit. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about some of the other things that you've done non-IICRC related as it relates to training for infection control. And you built an organization years ago that focused on that. So I got to say, and speaking on behalf of all Jancast listeners everywhere, and there's hundreds and thousands of them, that we're really, really thrilled to have you on.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be on. I've been looking forward to this.
So tell us the history, how you grew up and you said, I always wanted to be in infection control, right? When you're like 10 years old, your parents said, what do you want to do, Graham? And he said, I was thinking about killing C. diff or something,
Right. Yeah, it's crazy how life happens. And for me, it started off on the cleaning side of the industry. I answered an ad in the newspaper way back in 1986 for carpet cleaners. And at that point, I was working on a chop saw in a door plant, making minimum wage. And it was like, I got to get out of here before I chop my fingers off. And my first carpet cleaning job, it was with a 17-inch shampoo scrubber and a wet dry vac to vacuum the carpets up after shampooing them. And then it evolved from there. We got a portable and started rinsing and dumping everything down the toilet after showing Mrs. Smith how much dirt we pulled out of her carpets. And then eventually got the truck mounts. And in 1990, I started my own carpet cleaning company, as many do, many have. My desire was really to do the best job possible, given the equipment and technology that we had, and I realized that I could do better. I just wasn't ever really scheduled or given the time to. There was always this time pressure to bang out those jobs, and so. I started taking all the IICRC courses at that point, and kind of was insatiable in getting training, educating myself in the cleaning industry. Took a great pride in cleaning rugs and upholstery, and being able to clean absolutely anything with any technique, whether it's Haitian cotton or silks or bleeders. Setting the dyes before cleaning them to clean them up and not bleed them all over the place. So that went from there, and then property managers started saying, hey, can you get the urine out of the carpet, and can you deal with this and these cigarette burns? And so then you take a carpet repair and reinstall class and start fixing seams and restretching. And one day my supplier said, hey, would you be interested in subcontracting to a restoration company? And it's like, well, doing what? And they said, well, they need someone to reinstall the carpets and then clean them, and afterwards, after they dry it out. And it's like, well, never done it before, but how hard can this be? And things evolved into full restoration, and then around 2009, I was looking at the industry and where preferred vendor programs were going even then, 15 years ago, and went, this is a race to the bottom. I would like to work for customers that appreciate the expertise and experience and training that I invest in my employees with. Insurance companies don't appear to do that. They are more interested in price, and I thought, what about healthcare? And how do you get into hospitals? How do you work in hospitals? And I started going down that path, and it was again, it was investing in education and learning and taking courses that were offered through the training bodies that were training hospital facility maintenance and operations people, and healthcare courses in healthcare construction, and learning about infection control for the first time, learning about hospital-acquired infections and nosocomial infections, things that were completely foreign to me prior to going down that path. And again, when I study with a highlighter and a pen and ask a lot of questions, and I would buy the instructors lunch and take them out and pick their brains and have them on my speed dial and start just pestering them with questions. And that's always been my style of learning, and then try and experiment and keep asking questions. It's curiosity really is what has brought me into this, and it's a field that I love. It's sometimes say we're Molly made on steroids.
Well, one of the things that comes to mind, you haven't your thirst for knowledge that's insatiable, obviously. And as you went down the path of getting involved with infection control, at one point, sometime around 2016, you got involved as a master trainer to train others about what you had learned on infection control. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, what happened was, after taking Canadian Standards Association had a course called the Fundamentals of Infection Control in Healthcare Construction, Renovation and Maintenance, and then Effective Implementations, and they still run that course. And I took that course, got to know the instructors, started working in hospitals and developing experience in doing mold and asbestos and water escapes, macerator blowups, and all the rest of it in hospitals. And they tapped me to be on the CSA standard for infection control in hospitals. As a small company, a restoration, to get that restoration perspective, they had large construction for large new hospital construction expertise on their CB, but they didn't have anyone like me. And so that was around 2015 that I came onto the CSA standard. That edition of the standard was published in 2017, And then they asked if I would be one of 5 instructors teaching their 2-day class across the country. And so I did that for a few years. During that time, in Canada, we have a public healthcare system. And so rather than being private hospitals, it's the government runs it with health authorities, and each authority will manage the healthcare needs of the population in that region. In British Columbia here, there's the province is broken up into several health authorities. The largest 3 authorities in the Vancouver region came to me and another fella and asked if we could create a training program for their facilities maintenance staff that was more practical, more hands-on, and more and shorter, because they didn't feel they could take all their staff off the road for 2 days to put them in a class. They wanted something that was a little less than a day that could really be more practical for them. So we started developing that. We had to form a company to do that in order to contract with them, and that was how that birthed. We did that for several years. Then we took that across Canada and started working with health authorities from coast to coast.
Quick question for you. With all that background, what changes have you seen happen with infection control now that we're post-COVID?
Yeah.
I mean, Scott and I have joked about this in previous shows about 2019, people didn't even know what stay wet or dwell time was. You know, it was all spray and wipe like they're, you know, cleaning a pane of glass. And how do you see that being different now that we're in this somewhat post-COVID arena?
Yeah.
Is your question specifically within hospital, in the hospital space?
No, in
It
general,
doesn't
I
have
think.
to be.
Yeah. In general, yeah. We have listeners that broadly cover the whole industry as well as, you know, homemakers.
Sure. That's a good question. People say that that's a good question in order to buy time while they're thinking, right?
One of the things that we've seen, and I'll throw this out at you for your thoughts, is, you know, in 2019, nobody ever knew what the hell an electrostatic sprayer was.
Right.
And then COVID came along, and all of a sudden it became everyday term, as common as dropping the name of a beer or a brand of a car. Everybody knew what an electrostatic sprayer was. And then there was a period of time where I think there was a lot of over embellishment as to their capability too.
Yep.
So
and
we have kind of talked to that in the past, Scott and I, on previous Jancasts, that you know, they're a way of applying a disinfectant. They're one of many tools that can be used, from a trigger sprayer to a pump up to a manual pump up to an electrically pressurized. It's just another tool. But there was a lot of maybe over embellishment of their capabilities as it related to wraparound and electrostatic technology.
Well, you're kind of beating around the bush there, Mark. We didn't just talk about it. We put them down and essentially said that most of the claims people were making about the wraparound, and because we had devices that were, you know, I'm not going to mention any brands, but some of them had negative charge, some had positive charge. I mean, the whole thing was just a complete mess. And quite honestly, there's a whole bunch of people stuck with a whole bunch of electrostatic sprayers that are never going to be able to sell for anything, because people realized after the fact that they probably didn't work, quite honestly.
With the wrap.
With the wrap, yeah. They're the sprayers. There's nothing wrong with them as a sprayer.
Right.
It's just an expensive sprayer.
There you go.
Just to put it bluntly, that's all.
I know you own many electrostatic sprayers, so we know you've got an opinion, and we're
so you're asking for my opinion?
We're fishing that opinion out of you in a very subtle way.
You know, we have played with our electrostatic sprayers and every type of sprayers in our shop to test the wrap on different objects, different surfaces, different materials, and I have the most expensive electrostatic sprayer on the marketplace. I have you know, the cheap little handheld cordless, and frankly, yeah, the wrap benefit is minimal. I would say negligible in terms of its benefit. What do I like about electrostatic sprayers? They provide a consistent output of product and a much more thorough coverage of a surface without over wetting. And so on surfaces that you don't want runs on, it's a great way to apply product. The larger, like electric sprayers that deliver a larger droplet size, we've gone to, like, right now my favorite electric sprayer, which has replaced all of our pump up sprayers, is the Ryobi cordless. It's just it's such good value. One battery will, we've gone through 20 gallons of solution on a charge, and we finally said, okay, that's enough. We're tired of running this machine all day long, and just to see how long the battery will last.
But that's just a sprayer, though. That's not electrostatic, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
The biggest thing with sprayers is matching the solution to your sprayer. Because if you're taking a disinfectant that requires a 10-minute dwell time and applying it with an electrostatic spray or a ultra low volume sprayer, it's unlikely that the technician is going to put enough down to achieve the dwell time. And so what happened during COVID was an awful lot of COVID theater, where everybody that could get their hands on a sprayer and some kill juice became a viral decontamination expert, and they waved their magic wand and splooged some kill juice on stuff, and people had the illusion that something actually happened. But we know that from a science standpoint, there was no dwell time. There was very inconsistent results, generally poor, if any, cleaning, and it was a complete joke. It was a ripoff, you know, by people that just didn't know better. They didn't know. They were scared.
Well, that kind of leads back around to the reason why I believe you're so involved with the S410 infection control standard. What makes that standard different from other standards I've been involved with is that it's all about verification and validation of leaving behind a surface that meets the expectations, where it's not just somebody waving around the wand and, as you put it, the kill juice. You know, it's being able to verify and validate afterwards that if they thought they were going to end up with a sanitary surface at a certain level, that's what they're being delivered through the process that's happening. And I really enjoy that part of the S410. I know we've got a meeting coming up later. So a matter of fact, and then I'm sure this conversation will come up then too. Anyway, with all that said, you know, this has been really a fascinating discussion for our Jancast.com listeners, because they love this stuff.
Appreciate you being on. Let me jump back one last question on the. It sounds like your history of working in the cleaning industry almost led you in the perfect path for what ended up being the pandemic. And being an expert in that field, Bullen, we've talked about it on previous shows, 15 years ago, we had to decide, did we want to invest in the technology to be able to make disinfectant products? Because you have to follow all kinds of quality control procedures and keep records and everything else. And it's a little bit different than making a glass cleaner. So we invested the money back then and branded a whole bunch of stuff. Our Airx brand was very successful. And then we were almost like, it sounds like what you were. You were trained and had all the knowledge that was needed at the time, just like we had the products that everybody wanted. They didn't know how to use them. But so what happened? I'm in Costa Rica surfing in February of 2019 or 2020, and things are blowing up, and we're going, what the heck's going on? We had no idea what was coming. So what happened in your business, like as everything started to evolve and spread out, and everybody kind of realized, hey, we got a big problem here? Give us a fast recap of what your life was like at the beginning of the whole thing, if you can.
Yeah, it was trying to separate fact from fiction.
Mm-hmm.
What's true? What's not? What's real? What's the science? At first, we weren't sure with this pandemic whether this was contact transmission or aerosol transmission.
Yeah, right.
And so from a standpoint of safety and creating effective prevention measures, public health went down both paths and did everything. Then as we learned that it was an aerosol transmitted disease, then things changed a little bit, but didn't change much. People were still heavy into the contact transmission and really never did understand. Large sectors just couldn't wrap their head around the fact that a virus doesn't float around in the air by itself. It's always attached to a glob of goo, mucus, coming out of a person, and which is easily captured in even an inefficient face mask. And so people, the whole mask thing became so weaponized and politicized.
Yeah.
And then the vaccines, I don't even want to go down that road today. For us, our big customers, the hospitals, the health authorities, the large GCs that were doing capital projects in hospitals, all mandated that everybody stepping foot onto a hospital site had to be fully vaccinated.
Right.
And so we basically had to say to our employees that were vaccine hesitant that you can work on jobs outside the hospital, but for the jobs on the hospital, you can't work there. Not our rule. And if there's no work, you're sitting home. So you make your choice. And that was just the way life happened. It's working with a lot of our customers, there was an increase in shall we say deep cleaning and disinfecting. Our clients were more commercial because they were educated and wanted verifiable results. We ATP tested after all of our work and proved to our customers that there was a significant reduction in bioload on all of the high touch surfaces, that we were accomplishing what they were paying for. And that was really the essence of our pitch was don't trust me, ask me to prove it.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. Good. Just like our quality control with the products we're making. Yeah, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Where could people find you and get in touch with you if they wanted to? I can put it in the show notes later, but you're going to have thousands of people contact you, obviously.
Yeah, right on. GenesisRestorations.com.
Got it. Okay. We'll put that in the show notes. Mark, you want to say any closing?
Yeah,
comments?
final ones, because I have an associate named Alex who would love to know what your favorite dirt bike brands are.
Right now I run a Beta 300 RR for hard enduro. I run a TRS 300 one as a trials bike, and a KTM 950 is my adventure bike. So those are the three dirt-oriented bikes that I have.
Nice.
So my associate is going to call me when he hears this. That was cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, Graham, thanks so much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
really, it's been a great program. Fantastic.
Right
A lot
on.
of information.
Thanks
Okay.
for the opportunity.
See
Have a great
y'all.
day, guys.